Hey everyone, welcome to the second Mass Makers event. Excuse me because I have to read a few notes, so if I'm not looking directly at the camera, that's part of the reason why. We are here with Jarrett Krosoczka and we're going to tour Studio JJK in a few minutes. But in terms of formal introduction, my name is Mindy Home. I am from class of '99 in illustration. And if you were at RISD around that time, I may look familiar from such publications as Mixed Media. I am one of 4 leaders of the RISD Boston Alumni Club, along with Diana, who you may have seen when you first checked in, Sarah and Becky, who I think are also on. You may hear some mystery voices in the background if I miss something or forget something, and that's either Diana or Tway Tran, who is the director of RISD Alumni Communities. And in terms of the Boston Club, we're really trying to engage the entire state with events and tours and really anything you can think of. We had some really great things lined up for this year, like Founders Day with National Braille Press, which we're now trying to reschedule for next year. We had hoped to take a walking tour of Beyond Walls, the murals in Lynn. We wanted to do some backyard indigo dyeing. We wanted to do more of these virtual tours with you, drawing excursions, oysters and champagne. But we do have coming up a New Year's card exchange. So, ooh, what is that, you ask? Basically, we are asking people to submit their emails. We're limiting it to Massachusetts for right now, so I apologize if you're joining us from outside of Mass, but talk to your local club and maybe they'll do it. But we are basically inviting people to design a holiday New Year's card and send it to a RISD alum, and you'll get one in exchange. So it'll be a fun little way to transfer some art around. But we're always open to suggestions and feedback in terms of things that you want to do. In terms of being part of RISD, if you want to become a mentor, or maybe you're looking to find a little personal guidance for your own journey, you can sign up for the Alumni Network. Diana, I think, is adding some little notes to the chat so you can see her comments. The Alumni Association is also another great way for you to connect with your local alum. You can put information about gallery openings that you have or talks that you're doing. You know, if you're doing a TED Talk like Jarrett did, you can advertise it on the Alumni Association website. And then finally, don't be left in the dark. If you got this postcard from RISD, it's a reminder that you need to update your contact info if you haven't, so that you can find out more about what RISD is doing and all of that. So as I said, we've enabled the chat, we have Q&A. RISD is recording this and they'll be sending out a link to everyone. But I know you're all bored, you want to get to the good stuff. So let's start talking about Jarrett Krosoczka, who's sitting over there, or maybe he's over there. I don't know how your cameras are set up. He is also a graduate of RISD, class of 1999. He and I would spend a lot of breaks talking. He's leaving because he's bored already. Talking about designing a RISD musical. He is a very good friend of mine, and yeah, see, here's proof he actually went to RISD.
I'll just do the whole interview like this.
Yeah, I see your ring light. You're so mad.
Fancy.
Yeah. I can neither confirm nor deny that he and I once went to a party and danced on a table and the table broke, and that might have been our cue to leave.
Yes.
Jarrett is a native of Massachusetts. He was born and raised in Worcester. He came to RISD as a transfer, which he'll probably talk a little bit about. He's master of acrylics and color theory. He took advantage of writing classes at Brown. He wore very large 90s era pants during that time, and he was named Big Pants by myself and my friends. And he signed his first children's book deal for Goodnight Monkey Boy, which I had a copy of floating around. Oh, I have this big poster.
You have the poster?
Yeah, I hung up this poster specifically to mention it.
You mean that wasn't there the whole time?
Oh, yes. This is my Jarrett shrine. I don't know if I told you guys that.
Well, I figured that was Drew. Drew put that there.
Yes, my husband Drew, who's also a RISD grad, hung these up for me. He signed his book deal for this 6 months before graduation, or after graduation.
6 months after, yeah.
Yeah. He also drew this drawing of my dog. This is from a time that we surprised you, I think, at a Target reading event.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah,
that's the I would try to draw without looking.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't want people to confuse that with the aforementioned RISD college parties.
Right. Yeah, that's slightly different. But his books include things like, Punk Farm, the Lunch Lady series, Jedi Academy, and his most recent Hey Kiddo, which is a graphic memoir, which you were a National Book Award finalist for. So that was really exciting. And I just saw you have an upcoming book coming out called Sunshine.
Yes,
So
which is a
you have
it's like a follow-up. It's not a sequel, but it's a story embedded within the timeline of Hey Kiddo.
yes. Yes, it's about your time at Camp Hole in the Wall, right? The Hole in the Wall gang
close, Camp Sunshine. I worked at Hole in the Wall later, but Camp Sunshine was the camp where I started.
Okay, cool.
I thought you knew me, Mindy.
I know. You have so many awards.
I thought you kept track of all the camps I worked at when we were in our teens and early 20s.
Let's just cut to the chase. Tell me about the costume closet that you have.
We have a costume closet down the hall. Where I'm in my basement, and the previous owners, they had it as a wine room, and we enjoy our wine, but we don't make it. They made it, and so what are we going to do with the space? Our family's Halloween. My family, we have there's 5 of us, and we go through 2 costumes per year at Halloween time.
Right, only at Halloween time.
Yes, yeah. Basically, like, our goal as parents has always been to be the kind of parents in which the kid felt like they could dress in whatever costume when they're going to the supermarket.
Nice.
And now it turns out we don't want our kids going inside supermarkets at all.
It's true. And you've kind of shifted. I mean, I think we'll naturally get there, but you are kind of what I would describe as the maven, is maybe not the right word, but the guru of all kinds of media. You've in the past, you blogged, you're now on YouTube, you're on Instagram, you are doing chats with your origin stories with fellow graphic artists, illustrators.
Yeah, no, that's it. Other graphic novelists.
Yeah, so you were telling me that this studio that we're actually visiting right now is not quite a studio.
Well, yeah, so this was my New Year's resolution in January of 2020 was to do more webcasting. Did not expect to really succeed in following through. I was to get started. I was like, Facebook Live once a week, once a month. I would do YouTube Live for schools. But then with the pandemic shutting down, it's pretty much the only thing I had because I can't visit schools anymore. So at any rate, I always try to make one professional New Year's resolution goal, like just one, because that I can say, okay, here's something that I can achieve. How could I achieve it? And I took a step back and I said, well, I was doing some like Skype visits with schools, and the stress in that was always, oh, my space is messy. I need to make my space clean. Right. Or, oh, there's some sketches that are going to be on the wall behind me, and people can't see that yet because with social media and publishing, the publishers really don't want you talking about what's coming up until you're getting closer to the publication date. I mean, let alone if I'm working with like Star Wars kind of stuff, right? There's a lot of non-disclosure. So
you're cutting out on us a little bit. Hopefully you'll come back. I can see you. He's just going to reset himself. So while we are waiting for Jarrett to reset, I'll tell you a little bit more about what I know about him. This could get ugly. No, I'm just kidding. He did come in as a transfer. He applied to RISD as a freshman and was not accepted. And so he tried to figure out how he could actually make it. He had always heard about RISD as being an amazing school, and so he really wanted to be a part of it. Oh, you're back.
Okay.
Oh, I'm so sick of you.
Somebody, whoever's the running it, have the first one of me leave, I think.
Well, just turn the camera off on that.
Hold on.
Technical difficulty.
Hey, now we're
Hey.
here again. So of course, one of the major problems with tech is that sometimes it doesn't work. Right. Sometimes it doesn't work. And so that's one thing that things can fall apart. Like when you're visiting a space in person and the tech doesn't work, I just have a sketch pad and I draw for the kids. And so anyway, and then I have 3 kids. In fact, if I look distracted as we started, because I heard someone creeping in this room next to me, and then I heard Gina saying, "Get back here, get back here." And so this is not where I actually like make my books. So I knew the only way I'd be successful at following through on this thing of doing more webcasting was if I had a space that was just for webcasting, right? So this was a storage space. So I have here, I'll show you. I'll bring over there. See that I have all of my flat files over here.
Nice.
And so I had an extra desk. I had these shelving units, and so this is kind of like a set. You know, it's kind of like, you know, it's made to. This is what an artist studio should look like. So I kind of dressed the set for the background. This is before the pandemic, before we were thinking about Zoom backgrounds and that sort of aesthetic. And it was working really well for me to go on Facebook Live once a week and connect with the caretakers and the adults, teachers, librarians, parents. And I would just draw and I would just talk about what was going on in my life. I'd recommend a book. And then when everything shut down in the middle of March, and you know, I'm at the airport once a week. I visit probably between 60 and 70 schools per year.
Wow.
And so you know, everything was looking really sketchy on Friday, March 13th. And over the weekend, I developed an idea of a daily live YouTube show because I knew that so many parents like myself were going to be without arts education for at least a little while until the schools got set up. So I said, okay, you know, put it on social media, like, you know, we want to help. And so every day at 2 p.m., I'm going to come on YouTube live every day and give you a lesson. And 2 weeks, it'll be done.
Right.
And we'll just go back to normal.
Maybe 3 weeks.
Maybe 3 weeks. And then it became 3 weeks. And then I felt this real sort of responsibility because now a lot of the parents and families and kids were like sort of counting on me, right? So I felt this weird, like I kind of feel like I set them up to have this thing. And so I did it every day for 2 months. Wow. And then I went down to 3 times a week. And then once Labor Day came, I said, let me just take a break. And it was also at such a time, you know, with everything happening in our country, like I didn't have it in me, nor did it feel right to come on every day to say like, hey kids, we're gonna learn how to draw today when there was so many really important and heavy things happening. So I said, let me take a break. And instead, I had some other colleagues that are Black and of color that instead of watching me, watch these friends and to elevate them. And then I found that I was just so tired. All of that adrenaline and everything, I felt like a marionette without strings. I just need to just reset, take the summer not to make videos. And then I started up in August, and now I'm doing once or twice a week, I do drawing videos for the younger readers, but I also realized that for the Hey Kiddo readers, which are all teenagers.
Went still on us for a second.
Okay. That they needed, I wanted to let Draw Every Day get sort of weirder in a Pee-wee's Playhouse kind of way. And that would be very alienating to the kids who know me from this book that's about my mother's addiction to heroin. Like, totally different things, right? And totally. And I'm realizing like I have those 2 tracks. I'm like the lunch lady guy, but I'm now writing these young adult stories. So I started another show called Origin Stories, and that's recorded right over there. So here, so this is the background for my kids show, and then I just flip all the cameras around over there, and that's the background that I use for
to that kind of 90s school photo retro.
Exactly. Yeah. And I turn the mic around, I turn the camera on, all of that, and then I go right over there. In fact, now because I'm on my phone, I don't have the fancy mic, but I do have a Blue Yeti microphone. That's something that I invested in so I probably sounded really good when we started, but then it was glitching, and now we're here. But that's the thing too, is that, you know, you have to be a creative problem solver in everything, right? So even now I'm like, this is working really well on my phone, and it just popped up. It said, you have 20% battery life. And I was like, so it's like, it's plugged in. I don't know if it's taking a charge. But that's why I never get super stressed out or worked up about the tech stuff, because there's a good chance it's going to go wrong, and you just have to roll with it. And that's, I mean, I think that's the number one reason why, you know, arts education is so important, because we have to teach our kids to be creative problem solvers.
Absolutely. Well, so I feel like we started to talk a little bit about your history. So maybe we should back up and talk about transferring to RISD, what that experience is like, and then how you've evolved from doing things like Goodnight Monkey Boy and Baghead to these more adult-oriented storylines.
Yeah, so I did not get accepted to RISD as a freshman. So when I was a senior in high school, I was rejected. And you know, when I reflect on it, I looked at the portfolio now, like I would have rejected that kid too. He wasn't ready. Like I remember my art teacher said, don't include all of your cartoons, just draw stuff from life. And I was like, you're not gonna try to hold me down. I just gotta be me. And put all these cartoons in my portfolio. And of course, that's not what they wanted to see, right? They wanted to see that I had the ability to learn and grow, and went to a different art school. And I had a high school teacher who said the most consequential thing to me. I ran into her, and she said, whatever happened to RISD? Are you going to try to apply there again? And I said, Miss Guru, I don't know. It's in the back of my mind, but I'm not sure. And she said, look, if it's in the back of your mind, it should be in the front of your mind. And then she turned around and walked. She didn't even say goodbye. She just said, if it's in the back of your mind, it should be in the front of your mind. And that's something that advice has driven me in so many things of like, this is something that I want to do. So I applied, I came in, I had my little transfer squad. If any of my transfer friends are out there watching, and I'm not saying that you were there in the late 90s like we were, is that I feel like transfers have this unspoken language of, we didn't live in the quad.
Right.
You know, and so I remember there being a bit of a divide at first because we didn't have that shared history. But I do remember one of my first, like, you know, coffee breaks with in a studio, and all the students that had been there freshman year were like, this sucks, we don't want to be here. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Yeah, like, I don't want to do this. Shut up, no, this is so exciting.
Yes, it's true. Transfers, all of my experience with transfers, and I have a lot of friends who were transfers, were always much more dedicated and focused on some level, you know, a different level. I mean, everyone that attended RISD was obviously dedicated, but there was definitely a slightly different mindset.
It's a different mindset. I mean, you know, so whereas I thought it was like the worst thing to happen to me, it was good, because it also taught me that getting rejected taught me to work harder. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think that's a tough lesson for, you know, high school students, where they tend to be in a smaller pod of artists, right? And you know, and then you get to art school and you're like, whoa, it's just
surrounded by
everywhere.
Talent, and it's
so, yeah, it's mind blowing. So Goodnight Monkey Boy, this was my first book published, and this one came out in June of 2001. And so I started submitting books to publishers before I graduated, mostly because I really felt like I had something to prove to my grandfather. You know, my grandparents raised me. Their daughter, my mother, was addicted to heroin, and she spent most of my childhood in jail or halfway homes. And so my grandparents grew up during the Great Depression. Right. My grandfather didn't graduate high school. He went to serve in World War II. So now he's sending me to art school, which is so brave. Like he's a factory man. Like every time he came to, like, it was so outside of his wheelhouse, but he knew it was important to me.
That's awesome.
And so I started submitting work halfway through junior year and started getting those rejection letters, rejection letter after rejection letter, and graduated and went back to work at that hole in the wall game camp. So that bought me like 3 months before my grandparents started, like, they wanted me to come home to Worcester to live with them. And I remember thinking, you know what would make more sense? If I moved to Boston with no job, because that's where all my friends live. So that makes sense. Right. So like it was that decision was 100%. And I have no regrets. Like I made such great memories in Boston, living in Somerville, and, Davis Square, between Davis Square and Union Square, somewhere. That's neither here nor there, whatever. But, kept sending my stuff out. But one of the key things that happened to me was connecting with other alumni. So back then there was this thing called Yahoo groups for all of the younger alumni. Yahoo. So we had first you'd have to connect to the internet through a phone line, and because all of our computers were just attached to the walls, and you had to turn on your computer, because we used to turn off our computers at night, because that was kind of like what you would do to preserve the life of the computer. Right. And our self-validations didn't come in hearts and likes. It came in a computer voice saying, "You've got mail." Right. And I would go, and there was this 8-person alumni group. It was on a Yahoo group. And one of those members was Grace Lynn, who graduated in '96. And she lived on the same street in Somerville. So we'd go to the Someday Cafe, and we'd sit and talk and draw and talk about the future. And I had been sending a lot of my promotional postcards to the art directors, but she advised me to send them to the editors, because the editors tend to be the ones to make the decision on who's going to publish the book. The art directors typically come in after. And, the professors that we had, they weren't authors, right? They were illustrators only. Right. So, and I was trying to be an author as well, and Grace is an author as well. And from that advice and from that mailing, I got an invite into New York City. And that's where Goodnight Monkey Boy came from. So then I had several picture books after that, like you mentioned, Punk Farm. But when I was publishing all of these picture books, I was thinking about this story about a lunch lady who fights crime. And so this was a story that I started thinking about in 2001. By 2005, I had the vision of what the story was, and that it would be a graphic novel. But publishers weren't publishing graphic novels. They just weren't the main publishers for children. There was no market for it. So when I submitted this, they didn't have a PLN, which stands for profits and loss. So when publisher picks up a book, they run these numbers on fancy computers and people who know math, and they say, this is how much it costs to make. This is how much we might have to pay this person. This is how much we think this is how much we'd have to sell the book for, right? So they had no P&Ls for this. Picture books are easy. They have a track record. Mm-hmm. So they had it for a year, and they finally agreed to publish it. And one of the things too is the book's printed in limited color, because they weren't convinced that printing it in full color would be worth the investment, because production cost goes up, retail cost goes up, and they didn't want to
fight with them on that, or were you? I mean, because obviously you have a vision, so.
There really wasn't. I didn't really have much standing in the argument, because it comes down to their costs, right? So it was like, do I want to get the book published or not? Mm-hmm. And so I was part of the decision making to say the signature color should be yellow, and that was based on the iconic dishwashing rubber glove, which right. Everyone has these just off camera, right? Just yeah. and so, but all along too, since the first book was published, I thought about writing a book about my life. Now, my initial hesitation was, man, what are people going to think about it? Like, by people, I mean the people that are my family, right? And one of the beautiful things about growing up and getting older is you eventually don't care what your family thinks about. You learn to get a little detached, and
Yeah.
you don't need that affirmation from them as much. So when I got to that point in life where I was ready to write a book about my life, what also helps outlive people. I mean, that's part of it too. I mean, my grandparents had passed. A question I get often is, could I have written Hey Kiddo if they were still alive? And I might have been able to. It would have been, it definitely would have been more difficult. Because when I sat down to write it, I didn't want to hold anything back. And
Right.
I'm very fair to everybody. I sort of just present, there are no heroes and villains in the story. But you mentioned that TED Talk where I talked publicly for the first time about my mother's addiction to heroin and how that affected me and how she was an artist and how I'm an artist. And, that talk I was a last minute replacement. I don't know if you know that story.
I know, glimmers of it.
Yeah. So I was like, woke up, went about my day, was eating lunch, and my phone rang. It was Friday, and it was a Friday in October of 2012. And this producer at the TED Talks at the neighboring college said, "Hey, our headliner quit. Could you fill in?"
And did you know this person? Like, where did they get your information?
Vaguely, like we have one person in common. Like,
Oh,
it's not like they called and I didn't. There was no caller ID, and I still answered, right? Like, both.
Those were the days.
I'm like, yeah, I don't know who this is, but I'm going to answer it. And I agreed to give the talk to fill in, and Gina sort of coached me through on what I should. She was the one to say, hey, you should talk about your childhood. You should be brutally honest about what happened. Don't hold anything back. And I arrived at the venue, took my seat, the lights went down, the first speaker went up. I had no chance to practice or run through it other than the anxious thoughts that were like the little anxious hamster on a wheel in my mind was like, for like 5 hours, right? And all I knew, like, here's the only thing I knew to be a truth in that moment is that I'm mic'd and there are 5 cameras on me, and whatever I say and do will end up on the TEDx YouTube page. So TEDx is sort of like the farm league. And then there's the main TED.com. They have their conferences, but then every now and then they take a TEDx talk and put it on the main TED. And that happened to me. And I mean, it's been viewed over 1 million times.
Yeah.
And every time, and I think about that so often, like, I can't believe, like, I could have been in Texas because I travel so much for my stuff, and I just happened to be home. But more importantly than those millions of views were the specific stories that kids shared with me. Because I'm there to talk about Punk Farm or Lunch Lady, and you have a 4th grader coming up to you to say, hey, I have a connection with you. And they're not there to talk about like, oh, I also read Garfield like you did when you were a kid. They're there to say, my mother's in jail too. And we talk about it, and they'd leave, and the teacher would say, that's the first time this kid has ever said that, right? So I'm talking about every school. It wouldn't matter suburban, urban, rural, private school, public school. At every single school, I would make this kind of connection. So you do have the switch that goes from like, oh, here's something that I always thought, a book that I thought I might like to write, to now realizing this is a story that I really feel an obligation to write because I've lived the experience. I know the story. I have the ability to tell the story in a unique way with words and pictures. I'm also positioned because I already have an audience. And that doesn't mean it was any easier because it was terrifying. Because now the fear was people know me as the lunch lady guy, and I'm going to use every curse word I ever heard as a kid, every curse word I used as a teenager. And I was really nervous about shattering the image that I publicly curated, right? Like that.
Like the wholesome children's book author, yes.
Yeah.
I've seen that headshot of you.
I went from like this to this. My grandparents, right? And like most children's books, you're like, no one holds, no one smokes, everyone's wearing their seatbelts. And I'm like, no, like I had to go through and like put more smoke in there for my grandfather, make sure there's no grandparents were wearing seatbelts at any point. They thought that was terrible.
But it was your reality.
but it was my reality.
Yeah.
And it's the reality of kids, right?
Right.
And the turmoil. And the months leading up to publication, I thought, I don't want to do this. Like, I already finished it. I signed a contract. It's like, when you like get on a roller coaster and you're like, I'm brave. And then the roller coaster's at this point and you're like, and the roller coaster is like just upright, and you're at that peak. You're like, oh, and then you go through it and you're like, oh, that was. I feel like I've grown from that experience, right? Like, I feel I was brave enough to do that. And wild. I mean, and also, if anyone is listening who wants to share a deeply personal story publicly, it helps to have, like I gave that TED talk, so I was able to know what it was like, but just learn as much as you can about self-care. So I learned enough to say, you know what, I shouldn't have all of my social media open so people could write me, because I'm going to be inundated with people's pain.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot. I can't take that on at a moment's notice. So when I'm doing events, especially in person, I could at least say, okay, I'm in the mindset now where I can receive people's pain. They're coming to the book signing, they're sharing these really difficult stories, and I'm going to listen to them, make sure they feel seen and feel heard. And then I can, as best I can, then put that in a box, leave it at the event, and then go home. Not every event, not every pain that was given to me was I able to leave behind. Some of it, I still very much will live with me, like very young people who lost parents or siblings to overdoses. But, I guess I've come to realize, like, we're not writing a book because I'm hoping it's going to win an award or sell a bunch of copies, but because I feel compelled to, right? I think that's what we all do as artists. Mm-hmm. We just feel compelled to do this.
So you're compelled right now. You're finishing your sequel, would you call it? Your follow-up to Hey Kiddo.
Yeah, so there's a whole
about it.
There's a whole chapter in Hey Kiddo in an early draft where I talked about working with kids with cancer and how that really had a profound mind shift for me on pain and grief and trauma. And it was a story that just got, it was a chapter that just got to be too unruly and just too much of a departure from the rest of the book. And so it became just one page in Hey Kiddo, right? So a whole chapter became this page.
Oh, wow.
About working at camp and meeting these kids with cancer. Now there's going to be a 240-page book about this. So you'd be able to read Hey Kiddo up to here, stop, read this whole other book, and then read that last sliver of Hey Kiddo for one continuous story.
That's awesome. I think I told you this, that my mom actually used Hey Kiddo for her book club.
I love that.
Yeah, she, my mom lives in New Jersey. I won't tell you her age, but she's of an older bracket. And she said that the people in her book club really loved it because it was such a departure from what they normally do. And they really got engrossed in your story and everything. But yeah, anyway.
I love that. I mean, what I saw was a lot of people who sort of would be considered, would self-identify as a naysayer of a graphic novel.
Right.
And then they read it and they said, oh, wow, this can be a powerful story. It's not kid stuff necessarily, and it's not light.
Right. Well, so I feel like we should take a look at some of your work and talk.
Yeah, do you want to see? Well, this is perfect now that I have it on this thing here. I'm just going to press a button to make sure the battery is charging. You're going to lose me for 1 second. Hold on.
That's fine.
I blame myself for buying off-brand iPhone chargers.
Oh.
And that's what's happening here. So it's not charging, but let's just go. I bet it'll give me like the 10% warning, right?
Okay, yeah. Okay. Well, we're trying to keep this to 7 o'clock. So maybe, you can milk it.
I know. What time is it?
6:38.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So here, let me position. That kind of works out well because now I can just put this here. So these are my flat files.
Yeah.
And these are all picture books That's the one thing. It came like that. I never got it fixed.
Classic.
These are picture books, and these are graphic novels.
And so
this is my Monkey Boy drawer. Here, let me grab the book so I can show you the differences. So this is the original dummy book for Goodnight Monkey Boy. And then let me pull up some art. Now, the sad part about my early books is that I did not have the resources to buy archival paper. So they are all painted on cardboard. And it's like, I'm going to be lucky if I outlive the original art for these. You know, like I think the actual acrylic paint will last longer than than the actual paper it's painted on. So here, I've always done such a great job of matching the color.
Oh, wow.
So that's the book, and then that's the painting.
So do you normally start with just pencil sketches, charcoal sketches, and then move to, I know you like to kind of go old school and paint your underpainting and then go on top.
Yeah, although I have to admit, I haven't done like a fully painted book in a while. The last couple of picture books I've done, I've tried to be more experiential. So Peanut Butter and Jellyfish is all physical abstract paintings that were then collaged together in Photoshop. And I haven't had a picture book published in a while. And I haven't felt a super strong calling to that format as much as when I was just getting started. This is from Punk Farm. And again, it really is a marvel, the production value.
Yeah.
I mean, even just over Zoom, you could see. And also here are all sorts of different, like, I keep everything just because you never know when I'm going to need it. And you very rarely get, oh, let's see.
Oh, there you go.
You very rarely will get a printed letter on their letterhead anymore. Now it's just email. Mm-hmm. And so this was dated March 30th, 2004, about getting Punk Farm published. This over here, I'll bring you over here. And this is where I have all of my
Nintendo games.
All of my Nintendo, and all of my 8-track. So if you want to rock out to some Pat Benatar.
Yes.
I'm obsessed with, I love old technology, and my grandfather, these are all my grandfathers. The Beach Boys, Johnny Cash. 10th anniversary of Sesame Street.
Oh.
10 years. All right, so here, let me pull up one of the lower ones so you can see better. So this is all these are various Lunch Lady books.
So it looks like you work now in a hybrid where you sketch, you do some ink drawings or acrylic drawings or what have you, and then you bring it into the computer. Yes,
I mean, especially that was really the case when I moved to graphic novels, right? Because these were all getting colored myself.
We lost your picture. I wonder if your phone's dying officially.
Oh, 10%. Here we go. 1 second. In my back, here we go. So this is ink on Bristol Board. And to give you a sense of the size difference, you know, I work at about 200%. So let me find something from this particular book. There we go. So here's a page from the very first Lunch Lady book. And then the yellows were just put in in Photoshop. But one thing that I did do is I wanted to make everything look off-registered. So oftentimes, if you look closely, I even though it's all being done digitally, I wanted to give a sense of it feeling like an old comic that just wasn't printed perfectly. And then with Hey Kiddo, that really was a combination. So this is here. Let's see. Bring you down here. All right. You can see the story, Mindy?
Yes.
Okay. So the way in which I did Hey Kiddo is I'd have a sketch, and then I'd place it on a light board, and instead of redrawing it, so I'd have a really tight sketch, so I could be looser with the final art. But then on a whole separate piece of paper, I would have ink washes like this. So two physical pieces of artwork for every page in the graphic novel. And then it would all get combined here via Photoshop.
Right. So now some people might ask, why not just work straight in Photoshop?
You know what? Because especially with the ink washes, there's a lot of unpredictability about it, right? And so I wanted there to be mistakes. I wanted it to feel rough. I wanted the emotion of my frustration and anger and all of that to be felt with every brush mark that I made. And if you can just do like Alt Z and have what you made just go away, you get so reliant on that. So I wanted there to be controlled mistakes, right? So physical materials, and then and then going in there, I could, if an eye was a bit off, I could fix that in Photoshop. Now, the last 3 or 4 Jedi Academy books, these were completely digital, because these lines are, much more controlled lines, and utilizing, Adobe brushes that recreate the look of watercolors, and even the brushes that can recreate the look of pencils and ink. And so these ones were done completely in Photoshop.
And it sounds like maybe because that's less of an emotional, you have less of an emotional attachment to that book.
Totally. It's 100% it. Yeah.
Right. Great. Well, so when do you think you had, like, I guess, what would you say is one of your most profound breakthrough moments with any of your pieces? Did you ever have that aha moment where you thought, this is the bee's knees?
The bee's knees.
Is that with everything that you get published? It's like, at that moment, this is the bee's knees, so I'm doing this.
A little bit, I guess. I mean, when I get a book back, all I can do is find the mistakes. Like, I just want to fix everything, and I would say when I had this vision for what Hey Kiddo would look like, and that first time I married together the line work and the grayscales in Photoshop, and I said, yeah, that's exactly how I'd hoped it would look.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
But you're never done growing. Like, I feel like I'm still trying to figure all this out.
But I think
even though I'm super old, because I went to RISD in the 1900s.
Yeah, the 1900s was so old.
So old, wicked old kid.
All right, a few questions. I don't think we've had any questions from the audience, but they are welcome to put them in the chat if you have any for Jarrett. But I guess I will throw some at you.
Okay.
Who inspires you the most as an artist and a maker?
Well, I feel like such a politician, because I'm going to answer the question in a way that I want to, that doesn't actually answer your question. So I always have to give it up to my grandfather, because, I mean, he was a maker. Like, he did worked with his hands in a factory. But he taught me how to work hard. You know, he taught me about the importance of hard work, and, you know, talent just will get you nowhere. Talent gets you nothing.
Oh no.
Yeah, hard work and initiative gets you anywhere, anything that you really want to get if you work hard enough. Like, you just have to, and there's no crystal ball to know how long that might take.
Right.
But yeah, no, talent does nothing for you. You have to just be incredible hard worker. And so that's been my through line for everything in what I do.
Okay. Related to hard work, somebody, Kathy G. Johnson, asked, how do you book so many school visits? That's amazing. Do you have a manager?
I do now. Look, I mean, when Gina was pregnant with our first kid, it was 2008. And I was 7 years into my career, and I was fairly busy visiting schools. She was 6 months pregnant when she lost her job and lost the health insurance that we carried. So, and now I'm quickly realizing we are now a single income household, and I'm going to be a dad. How the hell am I going to do this? And so I went to local regional library conferences, and I just sat there with a portable DVD player that was playing like a DVD highlight reel of my author visits.
Nice.
Handing out postcards, like desperate to get booked, right? And this is post-punk farm. Lunch Lady isn't out quite yet. And I would have a sketch, and I'd say, put in your email here if you'd like to try to win the sketch. And of course, what I did, I would use those emails to say, if you'd like me to come to your school from this email, like, I'll give you $300 off. Like, just so, like, please, like, let me get in there. And it's just, I get this many author visits because it's built upon 19 years of experience and 19 years of word of mouth. And not only trying to figure out a good and engaging presentation that's entertaining and educational, but then offering those schools like really good customer service from the second they email me to the moment I leave their school. So for a little while, Gina was helping me manage those emails. Before Hey Kiddo was getting published, there was a lot of writing on the wall that this, you know, we had booked Fresh Air with Terry Gross, and I thought that's going to be a game changer. And so I did book a manager. So now I have somebody who handles all, I don't have to touch any of that. And honestly, it's a huge relief. She gets a 20% cut, but
that's only recently that you've brought on a manager. You've been doing it yourself since graduation.
Yeah.
Before graduation.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah. But if it weren't, like, I call those librarians are patron saints of the arts, because if they didn't pay me those honorariums, I wouldn't have supported my family, and I wouldn't be able to do this books. Like when Gina was pregnant, I went on monster.com and I applied for jobs.
Monster.com.
Yeah. And it was the most humbling email of my career, where it was just a local sign store, but I'm like, I know how to paint. And they were kind of like, the email back was kind of like an intervention. They're like, you're our kid's favorite author. Like, why are you applying for jobs?
Right.
And I was like, because I need to figure out how to support my family. Right. So, and so it's just a hustle of just, you know, one school after the next, you know. Mm-hmm. And I've made so many great friends and those educators. And now look, those kids from my early school visits, like they're all in college or post-college now, which is weird.
That is weird.
Yeah.
Well, so do you have suggestions for maybe recent grads or people that have been out a couple of years that are trying to get published, that are trying to kind of break into this world? I mean, I know obviously your contacts are established at this point, but
yeah, I mean, you know, in regards to like how I get started on the speaking circuit, I would just do some things locally for free, you know, and you just learn what works and what doesn't work. In regards to getting published, you know, it's a little different from like, I get published by blanketing publishers with promotional postcards. And I still think there's a lot of value in that, except for the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic and people don't want to touch physical mail so much.
Right.
And none of these art directors are going into the office. So my sort of like my 1-2 punch approach was always, here's my postcard. Even if they're going to throw it away, right? They have to look at it, and make sure your website is on the front of the postcard. If they like enough to put it on their little shelf or their bulletin board, there's my website. Now, like when we were graduating, I remember talking to some of our teachers saying, I'm building a website. And they were like, that's not going to work. Like, they're not going to take all the time to look at art on a website. And so you have to be forward thinking, right? You have to, like when MySpace was a thing, I had Punk Farm on MySpace because it kind of fit the brand of Punk Farm as well. And so I'm always also looking for, all this digital stuff isn't a sales pitch. This is a way to enhance and bring a deeper appreciation to my main piece of art, which is my books. I'm lucky enough that I also have always been a performer, right? Like I've always been like a ham. Like I'm happy to pretend to tap dance in front of the crowd. Right. Although I will say, like, I used to be petrified of public speaking.
Well, I was going to say the first time I met you, or I remember having seen you, was Halloween at RISD, and you were dressed as Ace Ventura. And my roommate and I were coming out of the quad, and you were going in the quad to go eat. And I said, hey, Ace Ventura, and you turn around and you did like, oh, alrighty then. And we just burst out laughing. And that was like if I think about the times that I ever met you, like that's the first time I officially, unofficially met you. So.
And I think I remember that because I remember walking away being like, I think that's the girl that's on the school newspaper.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you still do illustration if you went back now? Would you still pick that as your
absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think you're gonna get God, this is gonna sound like what do the kids call it? Shady. I don't mean for this to sound shady, but I don't think you're gonna find a better education in painting than in the illustration department, at least as I know it from when we were there, and I'm assuming it's the same. That sophomore year program, it's still true, Kathy. It's still true. Yeah. And so that sophomore year program, where I was just so eager to get into illustration, but like no, like you still need to learn how to draw. You still need to learn how to paint. You need to learn how to communicate. So don't worry about creating a finished illustration. Right. Just show us a sketch and we'll tell you what's wrong with it.
Brutally honest.
Brutally honest, yeah.
Do you feel compelled to make anything else besides drawings and paintings? Like what? I know you paint pumpkins. You dressed up as the conductor from the Polar Express at Christmas time. Well, I do. Up until the point you had.
No. No, I won't be there this year. But I've always been interested in performance, right? So I'm still chasing down how to adapt one of these projects for film or TV. So I've had a long history of getting a lot of attention for having things not get made. Right? So like, so Punk Farm. I know
where you're going. Yes.
Yeah, the Punk Farm was on the cover of Variety because DreamWorks picked it up in 2006, and a year later, and I remember my grandmother. I brought it home to show my grandmother in Worcester, and she's there. She's like, when are they gonna make it? And I said, well, it's 2006. And if I'm lucky, 2011. She's like, Jesus Christ, I'm going to be dead by then. Tell him to hurry the hell up. And she's also the one where, a major book retailer, which is still open. I won't say which one, but one of the major chains, and I won't mention it because it's still here, did not buy Punk Farm nationally because the one person didn't like the cover, which was a huge hit. To which my grandmother said, "Give me the name and number. I'm gonna tell them to go shit in the hat." And so, but DreamWorks picked it up. A year later, they called me up and said, "Look, it's not you, it's us. This isn't working out. We've had a couple talking animal movies that didn't do so well. So we are staying away from any talking animal projects right now. And Punk Farm, animals talk, so we're done. So someone else picked it up, and then Lunch Lady got picked up by Universal. It was going to be live action. Amy Poehler, cover of Hollywood Reporter.
Awesome.
That fell apart. Nickelodeon had it for a while, and it fell apart at Nickelodeon because they said, you know what, we love Lunch Lady, but right now we're focusing exclusively on talking animal projects. So this just isn't going to work out. Dead serious. And so I think there's something.
Did you do one of those? Well, I got a story for you, kid.
Yeah. And so something that I've always was like, look, like sometimes you just got to make this happen yourself. Like I'm kind of, you get to the age too where you're like, I'm done trying to convince someone of my worth. And so, we adapted Hey Kiddo to be an audiobook, which was no easy task because it's a graphic novel. So I had to adapt this printed material for audio. And then I was a co-director and co-producer, and I ended up winning a few awards. And then I also started a stage production where we had live readers, 10 readers on stage while the art projected on the back, and I directed that. And we had a year of maybe we did 5 or 6 of them, and I had visions of doing more, but not right now. So I'm just, I'm writing scripts for Hey Kiddo, for Lunch Lady. I'm actually working with an old classmate of ours on Punk Farm, and just being like, you know what, instead of waiting for someone to come to me to say, I like your book, I'm going to take it from you, put it in a blender, make it unrecognizable and taste like crap. Or I can make this movie. I've never used this metaphor. I'm not sure where it's going. But what I'm saying is, what's stopping me from writing the screenplay? I'm capable.
Nothing.
Right.
And
So
your story, your words. So totally.
Yeah. Right. I mean, that all being said, there has to be changes when it adapts for a different medium.
Right.
And I think one of the classic examples is, Harry Potter. The very first Harry Potter movie was exactly like the book per J.K. Rowling's requirements, and it's a really boring movie. It, versus the subsequent sequels, the movies are much more engaging because they adapted it for the different format. Right.
Wow. Jarrett, this has been amazing.
It's been so nice.
Yeah, we're run out of time, but I have a last few questions that came up here. One of them, I assume you'll understand what it means. Now that Holy Name is no longer Holy Name High School, did you go and get the Napoleon that you painted?
Oh, yeah. I was really sad. So my high school, Holy Name Central Catholic High School, merged with another Catholic high school, and they changed the name, they changed the identity. But I was sent to do an all-school assembly in the spring. And famously, in the lore of this high school, there is and I don't know, is that person a Holy Name alum, or do they just know this from the book? It sounds like they know their Worcester if they're. I was tasked with painting a mural of our school mascot, and our mascot was the Napoleon, the weirdest mascot ever. And I painted this mural, and I got away with this, amazingly enough, but I positioned the light switch on the crotch, and it remained there until they painted over all the walls. Yeah.
Amazing. That's hilarious. Last question. Do you get requests to sell original artworks for the publications? Is that a revenue stream for you? I know that you have an Etsy shop, you do pet portraits.
Yeah.
You also donate quite a few pieces to places, so.
I belong to a gallery in town. It's a very nice gallery, very fancy gallery. I appreciate everything they do for me. I found much more success on Etsy painting pet and kid portraits than selling the original art for my book. And I think part of that is, it's priced, the art from the book is priced at such a number that it's out of reach for most people, unless you're a serious collector. Mm-hmm. Versus Etsy, it's anywhere between $100 and $500. And I'm also so much more attached to this work. I've had a few people from educational institutions, higher learning, who want me to donate all of my papers to them, but that means that like, I don't feel like that's fair to my kids, right? So my kids, 40 years after I die, they might want to have all this art, either to sell it or do whatever with it. But if I were to sign an agreement with some of these institutions, they can't get it down the line. So I might make like 400 pet portraits a year. And you know what, it makes me happy because it's so distracting. It's not book related and I'm drawing people's dogs, some cats, one turtle. Once I did a turtle.
Chickens?
Not yet. I bet that post like in these unusual times, a lot of people got chickens.
Two. We have friends who they had one chicken pre-COVID. Now they just got a second chicken. So yeah. All right. Anyway, I don't want to keep you. I know you have 3 kids upstairs that are waiting. I appreciate your time, your energy, your enthusiasm, all your many books and things that I have on display. I don't normally decorate like this. I just do that for you.
Well, also another key piece of advice is that things go wrong and you have to roll with it. Early on, this entire water bottle tipped over. Classic. And I have been sitting here in wet socks and puddles of water, super uncomfortable. But that had nothing to do with it, so I ignored it.
Is that why you made the comment of like you just have to go with it?
Have to go with it.
Wet sock-footed.
Yeah. It was so nice to chat with you, and thank you everyone who joined in.
You too. Yeah. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. If you are interested in giving a tour of your studio in Massachusetts or just joining the RISD alumni group in general, Diana is putting our emails into the chat so you can get in touch with us. And other than that, somebody says, I have chickens, black chickens. I am Samani. Haha. I don't know what that means. I think it's chicken joke, maybe. I guess,
yeah.
Sorry.
We're pug. We have pug people. If it was a pug reference, I get it.
Yes. And you're a pug, Ralph Macchio.
Yeah, she's 13.
Wow. And Ralph? Wait, who's the other one? Do you
Frank.
still have the other one? Frank. Right.
Oh, it's the breed of chicken. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
I thought I was like, I didn't know if that was like a gamer reference that I just.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I've never seen a black chicken, I don't think.
No.
Anyway, all right. Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you again soon, we hope.
I'll see you on the Instagram.
I'll see you. Bye.
Is this you hang up or do I hang up?